Genesis chapter 41. If you didn't bring a Bible with you, feel free to use one of those in the chairs. You should see one around you somewhere. We're going to look at Joseph today. We're going to start our reading at verse 41, but we certainly have some groundwork that has to be laid before we can really understand what's taking place. The truth is, the story of Joseph, arguably is one of the greatest human stories in history. Now, of course, I'm setting the story of Christ aside from that phrase because Christ, Jesus is God, and His story is amazing and it's critical to our faith. But He is God, and Joseph is a man, as human as we are. And what he endured and his response and how the events unfold truly, to me, put his story at the top of the list in regards to human suffering and overcoming. But here's how the story of Joseph begins. See, Joseph is the 11th son of Jacob, okay? And he has one younger brother, Benjamin, and he and Benjamin's mother is Rachel. Now, Rachel was Jacob's true love. Jacob worked 7 years to marry Rachel, had that great wedding night, and woke up the next morning, and Jacob realized that he's not laying next to Rachel. It was Leah, Rachel's older sister, and his father-in-law had deceived him. And when he confronted his father-in-law, he was like, look, it's just our custom that the older daughter marries first. So Leah's yours, but you can also have Rachel. You just have to work another 7 years. So after 14 years of working for his father-in-law, he finally marries the love of his life. But we have problems, okay? Because Leah is not feeling loved, cries out to God, and therefore she starts having children, and Rachel is not. So then Rachel gives over her maidservant to try to, kind of force the issue and have children, but it's really not her doing it. So you have some older brothers of Joseph who are from Leah, some older brothers who are from Rachel's maidservant, and then Leah does the same thing. And so then there's some older brothers from Leah's maidservant. So by the time Joseph is born, he is there's 4 different mothers involved in this family of 12. And Joseph and Benjamin are finally born to Rachel, the love of Jacob's life. And so, kind of understandably so, Joseph is highly favored in the family at the point of his birth and childhood. Well, this creates a problem for Joseph. It creates a big problem for Joseph because his older brothers end up hating his guts. That's the bottom line. Harboring hatred towards their younger brother because of the favoritism showed by their mutual father, Jacob. I mean, things happen like Jacob makes him a really nice, beautiful coat, and Joseph gets this present and wears it. And then there's this event that takes place one night where Joseph has some dreams. And in these dreams, essentially, the interpretation is he sees his family bowing down before him. Of course, being the not as mature of a young man as probably he should have been at this point, realizing that his brothers already hated him because of the favoritism, he shares the dream with his brothers, and of course that doesn't go over too well. I mean, they already hated his guts anyways. Now you're telling us that we're going to bow down to you, younger brother? Right. And a set of events then begins to unfold. One day the brothers decide they want to kill him. They throw him into a cistern, and they're trying to decide how they're going to do that. And And then they decide, instead of taking his life, let's just get rid of him. So they sell him into slavery. They sell him to a band of Midianite merchants traveling by. Joseph gets sold into slavery, sent off to Egypt, at which point they sell him to the household of Potiphar. And he ends up being Potiphar's servant. Joseph, the hand of the Lord is upon him, so much so that Potiphar's household becomes truly blessed. And Potiphar says, hey, you know what? You are in charge of my entire household. Nothing I withhold from you except for my own wife. He should have told that to his wife, though, because at some point his wife begins to pursue Joseph. Joseph, being a righteous man, continues to flee from her, but there is an event where she grabs onto him, he flees and leaves his cloak behind. She's so angry at the fact that he has turned her down that she lies about him to her husband, says, look, he tried to attack me today. Potiphar throws him into prison. So his brothers hated him, throw him in a cistern, sells him into slavery, at which point he's sold to Potiphar's house, and then he's lied to by Potiphar's wife, and now he's thrown into prison. And all of these things are taking place simply because he is highly favored in his father's eyes because he was born of Jacob's true love. Doesn't this sound like a really fair story to you? After whatever particular amount of time Joseph is sitting in this prison cell, there's an event that takes place with the cupbearer of the cupbearer of Pharaoh and the main baker of Pharaoh, and they get thrown into prison with Joseph as well. And after a certain amount of time of spending time in jail together, these two men have dreams. Very different dreams, opposite dreams, if you will. But they don't understand what their dreams are until they bring them before Joseph, and Joseph says, I know exactly what they mean. Here's what it means. Baker, sorry, dude, but in 3 days, you're dead. Cupbearer, I have a little better news for you. In 3 days, you will be reinstated into Pharaoh's kingdom. Sorry, Baker. Congratulations, cupbearer. Sure enough, 3 days later, these exact events take place. Baker loses his life. Cupbearer is restored. As cupbearer is walking out of the prison, last thing Joseph says to him, remember me. I'm in here unjustly. Get me out of here. And this is where we find ourselves at chapter 41. In fact, you'll notice the last verse of 40 is this. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. When 2 full years had passed. Pause. 2 full years. I mean, he's in prison innocently as it is. He's forgotten, and another 2 years passes. Now, I want you to ponder your own life circumstances for a moment and think about the unanswered prayers that you have at this point, or the set of circumstances that maybe you have found yourself in that you have been trying to pray yourself out of. And maybe it's days, maybe it's weeks, and you're starting to wonder, God, are you even hearing me? Do you even care? Does this even matter to you at all, what I am enduring at this point? And then we see Joseph. 2 full years had passed, and then Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. The cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. And so Pharaoh then wakes up. He falls asleep again and has a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. And the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings." Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. There was a young Hebrew there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile. When out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before." Then I woke up. In my dreams, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered, and thin and scorched by the east wind. Then heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but no one could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do." You see, the 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It's one and the same dream. 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterwards are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown you what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. So let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. Collect all the food during the good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. Well, the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials, and so he asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Let's pause.